one of the lessons from the international experience I have in the area of public sector reform is really the issue of the critical importance of thinking about timing, and tempo of those reforms. Really, the time element in those reforms, both the need to think long term, but to achieve results in the short term. To think reforms are long term processes, especially institutional reforms that can go through ups and downs, but thinking about the trajectory, and also taking advantage of the best timing to introduce reforms in terms of the political economy context, the politics, the electoral cycles, and so on and so forth. And the last thing is really around the tempo. Really, how fast you can push also depends on the context in which you operate, and the conditions and the incentives around those type of reforms. But one of the main lessons I have in a lot of these countries is really thinking about the time factor in reforms. I would turn around the answer saying that one of the very exciting experience that we look at is the UK's experience, especially in the promotion of the digital transformation of government. The government digital service has been a big innovation that everybody has found inspiration in, but also specific programs that GDS has put forward. The GovTech Catalyst program that the UK is promoting is very interesting in terms of its ability to incubate and to promote and to encourage more tech-based and database solution from private startups to improve and have an impact, both in terms of social impact, but also public value. The digital marketplace initiative of the UK, also promoted by GDS, is really an exciting way to try to how you reform the ways governments are buying technologies, how you diversify the markets for providers of government technology, and how you can promote small and medium enterprises, including startups, to provide those solutions to governments. I think these are the type of really concrete initiatives that governments can take to promote digital transformation, and also to promote a more active involvement from the private sector to reform the public sector and building public-private partnerships for innovations in government. I think there's a lot of ways, but like building communities of practice is really an important way through which government officials can exchange experience in closed-door environments, in Chatham rules, on the Chatham rules, but also that they exchange more about failures. I think we exchange a lot about success stories, but less about failures, and providing like an environment or a context in which civil servants, especially senior civil servants, can share failures is a very important way to promote that dialogue. And I think the Global Government Forum is really an interesting forum or an interesting space to promote that kind of open exchange, also about failures. I think what has not worked is probably can bring a lot of also lessons about how to do things and not to do things. I think in our field, including both the digital transformation and government more broadly, the modernization of government, I think there's a couple of challenges. The first one is really how we address and tackle the lack of trust in government. This is widening, and there's an issue around the trust deficit in government, and having more openness and more transparency and better data is probably part of the solution. But really, trust in government is really a big global challenge we see in a lot of countries, and also for different reasons in terms of the capabilities to deliver, but also the fake news we see around. Another one, especially for regions in developing countries, is really how you tackle inequality, and how you can ensure that the digital revolution will not, widen inequalities, and the digital divide will become bigger as well, both between countries and within countries. I think the issue of inequality is an important one for all public services and all governments. It's how you build policies that are addressing inequalities frontally, and that includes in digital services and digital government solutions as well. How do we address the specific needs of specific communities, being then the Afro communities in Latin America, or being the young unemployed populations as well? But the issue of inequality, both global inequality and inequality with countries, is one of the biggest challenges also we need to address. And digital economy some is said also to be part of contributing to growing inequalities as well. So we have to see that forward, how we can mitigate that. And I think the third challenge I would mention is really around corruption. How do you really promote integrity in public services to deliver better value for money, also better services, but also acting more honesty and integrity. And I think what people demand is not only to get more, but also to get better services, also more respect and more uh, assurance of integrity of the way the public resources are used, and therefore, tackling corruption in its different ways, be it big grand corruptions of big contract, but also the small petty corruption in in everyday services is really critical. Well, I think one that I read recently that I most enjoyed was about how democracies die by Stephen Levinsky and others. And I think it was really also an interesting read because the same authors were probably 20 years ago writing books about the opportunities of democracy and democracy is growing and so on. To now, we are a lot of us concerned about how democracies die, and the arguments they make is that democracy don't die by a coup, but they die much more slowly by by weakening the checks and balances, weakening trust in government, weakening of a lot of few things in a small way and little by little. So I think there was also a wake-up call saying, well, we all of this that we're trying to achieve is really about democracy and the quality of our democracies as well.